Does free trade have to be immoral? Literally, lacking in any moral considerations at all. Can free trade fundamentalism fail to deliver net benefits if there are other factors in play? As a libertarian, questioning free trade is like a Christian questioning one of the Ten Commandments. So, what of free trade? Clearly, tariffs are not a boon in free trade. In an ideal system, the consumer and the producer benefit the most from competition. Competition expanded to the world stage should theoretically be even better. If a local business is lost to foreign competition, the individual in that country still benefits from being able to buy the same product more cheaply abroad. The extra money they end up from the savings now allows them to improve their standard of living by buying things they couldn't have bought otherwise. That cost savings will be spent on goods and services that may cause new domestic businesses to pop up that weren't being able to be set up before. And it'll provide something we either don't have or an improved version of something we already have. Now, what I just said there, I believe to be fully accurate of free trade. The question is, does free trade work if your country is a free trader, or kind of like one, like us, and another country has a completely different plan? For example, is physical plant infrastructure, capital investment, and other costs of building a business irrelevant to the considerations of trade? Sometimes a physical plant for one form of business can be taken over and altered to suit a new business. However, if you're like me and you've lived in the Rust Belt, you know that that's not often the case. There are massive derelict factories all over the place. These are huge buildings that really can only be used properly by another manufacturer. They can't become retail buildings, warehouses, or housing. When a business does the free trade math and says, well, our profits can be significantly increased by abandoning the upkeep on this plant here in Indiana and going to a low wage country and getting away from our safety and environmental regulations, well, it clearly ends up being a benefit to the owners and the stockholders. It's a benefit to someone who buys the product as long as the quality doesn't drop off much. But if we look at it on a more micro side, how likely is it that the community that lost that manufacturing plant will have a net gain from such a loss? How about the county or the state? Now, likely the national GDP will benefit, shifting physical assets and turning them into, or from the blue collar areas and turning them into digits to be reallocated to the coasts. Good for the nation. But if a loss of the physical work site can be calculated, I suspect that each closure is a net loss from the state level on down. Another reality I think is being completely ignored is quality. The shift to cheap prices and poorly made goods hides a problem. Price wise, it makes it look like our standard of living is up. In normalized dollars, a wrench made in 1980 is more expensive than its 2025 counterpart. However, I'll probably hand that 1980 wrench down to my son. I'll be replacing the broken 2025 wrench in a couple of years. All our economic metrics tell us is that life is better with the cheaper wrench. No metric is tracking the fact that I have to spend more to keep replacing it. Consider appliances. For the most part, they're no longer repairable when they break. Does the cheaper cost per unit pay for the fact that we have to replace them more often? I suspect that part in the drop of our quality of life is in the fact that we have to replace things that used to be more durable, which ends up sucking up money that we could be spending on other things. If poorly made goods lowers our standard of living, this either speaks poorly of free trade or something in this mix isn't actually free trade. Now, the free trade argument would be, well, your business couldn't compete against a Chinese company, so therefore it had to adapt or risk going out of business. But this isn't completely true. The American company isn't in competition with a Chinese company, it's in competition with the entire Chinese government. Here's probably one of the biggest factors against one country being free trade while others aren't. If your company or sector of companies is up against the foreign government of a large nation, you're probably going to lose. The problem of it is, while our system is striving for a better situation for the individual, their system is considering things like strategic dominance. They aren't playing a game of corporation against corporation. They plan as a nation against a nation, targeting critical or vulnerable entities. It's not just about profits to them. And we saw this as proof during the pandemic. The moment it happened, the Chinese took care of themselves. They took all their medical product and basically hoarded it for their people. They didn't allow the consumers, us, who could pay a lot more for it, to buy it. So there's an example where free trade completely failed. What if a country like China is only building its infrastructure by playing the global market game, but their end goal is not a Barbie in every dollhouse? If they'll abandon the foreign consumer for the flu, they'll absolutely do it if they have national war goals nearby their nation or abroad in their planning. If the trading competitor wants your industry dead so that they can have it for themselves, and they don't care how much it impoverishes their own citizens to do it, I don't think free trade has a functional answer for this situation. Free trade assumes rational actors who will act exactly the same way as you would and walk away from something that's a losing proposition on the balance sheet. I think free traders ended up drinking the neoliberal Kool-Aid. They are so hell-bent at seeing a pillar of their system succeed, even when it may be failing, that they absolutely fail to see that they have joined the globalist camp. And the globalist camp is always myopic because it can never see when other nations are looking out for themselves and are willing to fully use globalism to rob the others blind. Worse, it assumes that no country will ever be pure enough to go to war against the United States or its interests. It assumes permanent US dominance. The final question is, must free trade be amoral? I mean by without morals. The Chinese have 1.7 million prisoners. They have poor due process. Many are political prisoners. They are forced to do manufacturing work. Are we really okay with that so that we can have cheap cell phones? Uyghurs are abused in concentration camps by the millions to produce products as slave labor. But that's okay because otherwise it would cut into Apple's profits. Children labor in mines in Africa to supply our batteries and solar panels. Is that good? Because the environment, something or other, blah, blah. Surely a person, and this is the free trade mindset, surely a person could just choose not to buy these products if they're morally offended by them. And I think that's one of those things that sound really good as a theory, But if you actually try to buy American for some of these things, in most cases, it's nearly impossible. The near impossibility for me to buy American is literally nothing I can do about. There's things I gotta have that I can't just ignore because uh, I have a moral problem with some of the ways some of our competitors use their labor. There's nothing I can do about it because this is policy created essentially by the government and all its apparatuses to create a trade policy that's well beyond any power I can speak to or have any kind of control over. I think in this case, a person is justified in seeking to elect government officials with the same moral qualms as you might have. Or to rephrase it, if I have a huge problem with this, I'm I should not be I should not be blamed if I am willing to accept a few hobbles to the economy if this bothers me. Because I can boycott Chinese products until, well, I starve to death, but it's not going to do any good. It's not going to change anything. Now, I'm quite aware of the problems that come with having governments negotiate individual trade agreements rather than having free trade. There's going to be huge problems with businesses lobbying for special cutouts and protections. And I agree that free trade is the best policy. It's much better when the government isn't involved at all. But this kind of assumes that our government's the only player and everyone's playing by the same rules. Ours isn't the only government playing. We as individuals cannot compete against foreign governments, nor should we be expected to. Now, my point isn't to suggest that government managed trade is better than free trade. I'm suggesting that free trade in a world of nationalist actors may not be as beneficial as the theory suggests. So, with that thought, what do you think in terms of looking at free trade versus the world of non free traders out there? Are we just better off sticking with free trade because the government's too untrustworthy to manage our trade for us? Or can we be diligent and try to make our government act moderately to do some trade managements to offset some of our competitors that are playing a completely different game as us? Tell me what you think in the comments below. Please smash the like button. If the YouTube algorithm brought you here and you're not a regular subscriber, look at my other titles. You will see stuff that you're interested in. Subscribe. And if you know somebody who might find this interesting, share it with them. Thank you for spending time with me this evening. Hope to see you again in a future video.